Lee Van Cleef was never meant to play comfort. Born on January 9, 1925 in Somerville, New Jersey, his sharp features, piercing gaze, and lean intensity set him apart long before he ever stepped in front of a camera. Where other actors projected warmth or heroism, Van Cleef carried stillness and danger, the kind that lingered even when he said nothing. Over a career that stretched more than 5 decades, he became one of cinema's most unforgettable figures, especially within the Western genre, not by dominating the screen with volume, but by commanding it with restraint. His villains were not caricatures. They were men shaped by experience, discipline, and moral ambiguity, and audiences sensed that truth immediately. Discipline. Before stardom, Van Cleef's upbringing instilled in him a precision that would later define his performances. His father was a watchmaker, a profession rooted in patience, detail, and mechanical order, values that quietly passed to his son. After graduating high school, Van Cleef served in the U.S. Navy during World War II as a radio operator, experiencing combat and long stretches of tension that demanded emotional control. Those years left a mark. He returned from the war composed, observant, and inward, qualities that would later give his screen presence an authenticity few could replicate. Though he briefly studied engineering at the University of South Carolina, acting soon drew him west, toward a career that would unfold slowly and unevenly. Hollywood's long apprenticeship Van Cleef arrived in Hollywood without illusions. His early years were defined by uncredited roles and brief appearances, often as soldiers, henchmen, or nameless gunmen. In films like High Noon, 1952, his screen time was minimal, but his presence unmistakable. Casting directors noticed his look, but that same look also confined him. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, he became a reliable character actor, frequently cast as villains, yet rarely given depth or narrative importance. A serious car accident and ongoing health issues further stalled his momentum, forcing him into periods of recovery while younger actors surged ahead. For a time, it seemed Hollywood had decided how far he would go. Reinvention through the Italian West. Everything changed when Italian director Sergio Leone saw something others had overlooked. In For a Few Dollars More, 1965, Van Cleef was no longer a background threat, but a central figure, Colonel Mortimer, a man driven by grief, honor, and calculation. The role demanded stillness and emotional economy, qualities Van Cleef had spent a lifetime developing. A year later, his portrayal of Angel Eyes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly cemented his legacy. Cold, methodical, and terrifyingly calm, Angel Eyes was not evil for spectacle's sake. He was terrifying because he believed in his own code. Van Cleef did not play villains as opposites to heroes, but as reflections of them. The anatomy of a complex villain. What separated Van Cleef from many genre antagonists was his refusal to flatten his characters. In films like Death Rides a Horse and Day of Anger, he portrayed aging gunslingers whose violence was tempered by experience and regret. These men were dangerous, but not reckless, weary, but not weak. Van Cleef understood that menace is most effective when it is quiet. His characters often spoke less than their counterparts, yet every pause carried meaning. This approach reshaped how Western villains were written and remembered, transforming them from obstacles into fully realized human beings shaped by loss, ambition, and survival. Beyond Westerns. Though Westerns defined his image, Van Cleef was never limited to them. In the late 1970s and 1980s, he transitioned into action films and television, reaching new audiences. His performances in The Octagon alongside Chuck Norris and Escape from New York as the imposing Hawk demonstrated that his authority translated easily into modern genres. On television, including The Master, he brought the same discipline and gravity, proving that his power was not tied to a specific era, but to presence. Even when roles were smaller, he carried them with the same seriousness that had once elevated minor Western parts into unforgettable moments. A private man, a devoted father. Away from the camera, Van Cleef lived a quieter, more grounded life. He married 3 times, raising children and navigating the strain that a demanding career places on family. One of the most telling moments of his personal life occurred far from any set, when he lost part of a finger while building a playhouse for his daughter. it was an accident, painful and permanent, yet he rarely spoke of it publicly. The injury became symbolic, a man known for toughness who revealed his humanity, not through interviews, but through action. Those close to him described him as reserved, thoughtful, and deeply committed to those he loved. The John Wayne contrast. Over the years, stories circulated about tension between Lee Van Cleef and John Wayne, two men who embodied vastly different interpretations of the Western myth. Wayne represented the classical Hollywood hero, larger than life, morally certain, and rooted in traditional ideals. Van Cleef, by contrast, came to symbolize the morally ambiguous frontier, shaped by European filmmaking and post-war realism. Their difference was not simply personal, but philosophical. Van Cleef's westerns questioned power and justice, while Wayne's often affirmed them. Any distance between the two men reflected the genre's evolution more than personal animosity, a shift from myth-making to introspection that mirrored broader cultural change. Two visions of the West. The Western genre was large enough to hold both men, but it was also a mirror of America's changing self-image. Van Cleef believed that the frontier was a place of compromise and consequence, not moral certainty. His characters operated in gray zones, where survival required adaptation rather than righteousness. Wayne's heroes, by contrast, stood firm against change, embodying a sense of order audiences once craved. Van Cleef did not reject Wayne's legacy, but he represented a different answer to the same question. What kind of man survives in a lawless world? Their careers ran parallel, not in competition but in contrast. Health, endurance, and final years. Despite declining health, Van Cleef continued working well into the 1980s. Heart issues and lingering injuries slowed him, but did not stop him. His final years were marked by steady work, selective roles, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing his contributions had reshaped a genre. He passed away on December 16, 1989, at the age of 64, from a heart attack. The news marked the end of an era, particularly for fans of the spaghetti western, who understood that his presence had defined its emotional gravity as much as its visual style. A legacy that endures today, Lee Van Cleef is remembered not merely as a villain, but as a craftsman. He transformed antagonists into protagonists of their own stories, men whose silence spoke louder than speeches. His performances remain studied, admired, and rediscovered by new generations of film lovers who recognize authenticity when they see it. He proved that greatness does not require dominance, only truth. In a genre once defined by clear lines between good and evil, Van Cleef carved space for complexity, and in doing so, ensured that his shadow would stretch far beyond the final frame.